Okay, Dragons, this is Unit 10 review over the District Common Assessment 9. Alright, we're going to ask to find the volume of this rectangular prism, so I'm going to take two of the dimensions. In this case, I'm going to take the x plus 3 and the x minus 4, and I will multiply them out using a multiplication box, remembering that x times x is x squared, and that I can combine these like terms, 3x minus 4x. When I do that, I get this trinomial. So length times width gives me this trinomial. Now I'm going to take that result and I'm going to multiply it by my third dimension, which is 1/2 x minus 3. So I'm taking an x squared times another x, so that means I have three factors of x, or x to the third. Let the 1/2 become my coefficient. And I'll do all my other multiplications, keeping track of the signs, remembering that a positive times a negative is a negative. I will be able to have like terms here. Alright, so on my quadratic term, my x squares, I have a -3 and a -1/2, so that's -3.5 or -7/2. So looking at my answers, these two have -3.5 or 7/2. The other ones do not, so I can eliminate those two guys. Now look at my linear terms over here. 3 and a -6 is a -3x. So out of these remaining two, the one that has a -3x is what I want. So I'm going to go with answer choice A. Next one is circle all of the following that do not represent binomials that can be written as a difference of two squares, remembering that a difference of squares is anything that can be written as a two-term polynomial or a binomial. Both being squares, difference has a minus sign in between them. So if I go through here, I'm going to kind of do this differently. I'm going to check the ones that are. This is x squared. This is 4 squared. Minus sign in between. That is a difference of squares. This one does not have a minus sign, so this one is not. This one is square. 25 is 5 squared. I have a minus sign. That is a difference of squares. This has a plus sign. It is not. Now the last one, a lot of people will get confused. This x squared is a square. 16 is a square like it was up here. I have a minus sign just like this, but there's this single x. And when I say single, the exponent is a 1. Okay? I can't multiply something by itself and have one factor of it. So this part right here means that it is not a difference of squares. I must have even exponents in order for it to be considered a square. So the ones that are not are going to be B, D, and E. Alright. Combine. Combine means that we're going to add. Okay? So if we take these, we're going to add them. And if you notice, in the first playlist, there is no d to the first power like there is in playlist number 2. So whenever I'm lining these up, I got to make sure that I'm lining up like terms. So I don't have anything above the 1/9 d, but I have to include it in my answer, so I can just bring that down. My answer is going to have a 1/9 d, and it's going to be plus. So if I look over here, the ones that have minus 1/9 d, I can eliminate right away. So now I have 4 and a third. 4 and a third is going to be 13/3. I know that because all my answers here are 13/3 in front of the d squared. So really it just boils down to this. So remember, I can either put this in my calculator, keeping the sign. This is -7/8. or I can get a common denominator. 3/4 is 6/8. So a negative 7/8 plus 6/8 will still give me a negative 1/8. So I'm going to pick this guy right here that has a negative 1/8, which is B. Right? Now, a lot of this has to do with multiplication boxes, and they just present them in a different way. This is one face of a cube. Alright, so here's my cube. I drew a cube over here. What do I know about the face of a cube? What shape is this? Well, it's a square. Okay? And anytime you're dealing with squares or rectangles, you deal with length times width. So this is just a multiplication box in reverse. So I'm going to make me a 4 square box. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put my quadratic term in the upper left, my constant term in the lower right. And then I'm going to go through here and I'm going to have to figure out which one of these, when combined with another binomial, will give me the trinomial in the problem. So as I take a look at this, I can go through this, but I'm going to save time here. This 5x minus 9, this C is going to work. So if I just come over here and try this, alright, I need to ask myself, what do I multiply 5x by to get 25x squared? Well, 5 times 5 is 25, and x times x is x squared. So I need another 5x up here. What do I multiply negative 9 by to get a positive 81? A negative times a negative, in this case 9 times 9 is 81. So if I look at this, if I fill out this square, does it give me a negative 90x? Well, let's find out. A negative 9 times 5 is a negative 45 with an x factor. And then a 5x times a negative 9 is negative 45 with an x factor. And if I combine that, negative 45 plus a negative 45 does give me that middle term. None of these other answer choices do that. So you just got to go through, start your multiplication box and see which one actually works. This one again is a multiplication box. You just have to go through and multiply these out and see which one gives you this answer. Okay, so on this one it's going to be C, and we can quickly prove that r times r is r squared. R times a negative 14 is negative 14r. Negative 10 times r is negative 10r, and a negative times a negative is a positive. If I combine these, I get my negative 24. None of these other ones will do that. And you can see the same thing on number 6. They talk about a billboard, and the problem number 4 they talked about the face of a cube. So they're trying all these different stories to go along with the problem. Don't let that throw you off. It's all the same stuff. I'll put my quadratic term in the upper left, my constant in the lower right, and we just need to go through and find which one will actually give me the original problem. Okay, and again, to save time, this one's going to be C. And if we prove that right here, once I put that on the side, alright, what do I multiply negative 4 by to get negative 20? Well, it's a positive 5. And if I multiply t times another t, I get t squared, but I need a factor of 3. So this needs to be 3t. So 5 times t is 5t, and negative 3 times, negative 4 times 3 is a negative 12t. And if I combine these right here, you can see that gives me negative 12 and 5 is a negative 7. This is the only one that works. Same thing right here. Again, they just use it, a division bar. It's the same thing. Take your quadratic term upper left, constant term lower right, whatever you're dividing by, put it on one side of your multiplication box and try to figure out which one will give you your answer. Okay, so negative 3 times a positive 2 gives me a -6, so I need something with a +2, so I can eliminate A and B. X times X is X squared, but I need a factor of 3, so I'll put a factor of 3, and you can see my answer pops up. And if you verify that, -9x, 2x, combine those, I get -7x. Alright. On this one, you can just multiply these out. Now notice that on these first three, these are monomials, so it would not be a 4 square box, it'll be a 1 by 2. Okay, so on problem number 8 is going to be B, because if we take the 5x, the monomial, the single term, times the binomial, 4 times 5 is 20, x times x is x squared, there's that, and then 5 times 7 is 35 with the factor of x, and there's that. So the answer is B. And then number 9, once again, just go through here and see which one of these multiply to give you your answer. It is going to be B. There's my 8r squared. There's my -15 at the end. And let's see, I get a 6r and a -20r combined is -14r, excuse me. On this one, I start looking at the problem and I notice, hey, this is less than or equal to, so it's going to be a solid line, so we can get rid of those that don't have solid lines. I start solving for y. I'm going to subtract x from both sides and divide by 2. Dividing by 2 will not change that, so I am going to keep my less than symbol. I'm not going to flip it. Remember, you only flip it if you divide by a negative. I'm dividing by a positive. So less than means I'm shading down and I have a negative slope. So these are both shading down, and we got to remember that this is a positive slope going up and right, and this is a negative slope. Go down and right. So this one's going to be B. Alright, 11 more of the same. Just go through here and fill in your quadratic term and your constant. They give me one of the things, and I'm going to find out that this one is going to be A. X times x is x squared, and 4 times a -3 is going to give me a -12. You notice that's the only one that has the -3. And you can verify the other part. I combine that right there, that gives me a positive x. Solving for y, I'm going to subtract or add 20x to both sides to zero that out, and then I'm going to divide by the number. Please don't forget that negative in front of the 13. I'm dividing by -13, and so there's your answer right there. And the last one, what is the slope? Please make sure you're plotting your points correctly. When you plot points, you start at the origin, -8, so I move to the left -8 and up 2, put a dot. Start at the origin, move left 4 and down 3. Notice this is a negative slope. I do a slope triangle. I go up 5, I go up 5 and left 4. So my slope is a -5/4. Remember, it's rise over run.